Four Rivers Smokehouse is a 17-unit concept based in Winter Park, Florida, founded by John Rivers, who originally worked in healthcare.
Well, my first job took me to Dallas, to Texas, and I always joke and say I met the two loves of my life when I was there. My beautiful wife Monica and brisket, for the first time. I grew up here in Florida, in the 70s and 80s, you didn't have beef. It was all pork. So that was the first time I got introduced to it, and got challenged and insulted by her cousins that I've never had real barbecue. So I said to them I would learn how to make brisket better than any Texan, and having no clue because I had never smoked before. It's just a lot of testosterone, a lot of beer. That was flowing that day.
For the next 18 years, as he traveled the country working in healthcare, he would visit barbecue places.
And just met so many of the greatest pit masters that are out there, and of consequence from that, I certainly learned how to make brisket, which was the hardest by far. But if you look at our menu, each one of our meats comes and is influenced by a different pit master in a different state.
The pulled pork is from Alabama, the ribs are from North Carolina, the chicken's from Georgia, and the tri-tip is from California.
That actually played well into our strategy, and I have to say it was unintended. But when you look at our menu and you taste our profiles, it's not locked into just one region. I really went out and tried to find the best in class in each one, and I brought those flavors back and went to work on them in my garage over those years.
Each restaurant has two smokers, and different meats are smoked on site.
So my big muscles, they'll smoke overnight. Brisket and pulled pork, the butts, and they'll go for brisket goes for about 18 hours and pork goes for about 16 hours. And then I can cross-utilize my other smokers during the day for some of the quicker smokes. Chicken is only about an hour at a higher temp, whereas ribs only take about 3 or 4 hours. So, and then we smoke sausage in there. We smoke our tomatoes because we make a tomato vinaigrette. We smoke hot stuffed jalapeno. So the smoker is, we put our potatoes in there. It's continuously in use. Both of them are.
Given that Florida barbecue is focused on pork, Four Rivers' top seller might be surprising.
It's our number one seller, which is great, because when we were building and opening, especially back in 2009, before really brisket took off in the Southeast, right, everybody was telling me why I was going to fail at this. Aside from not being a restaurateur and having no clue what I was doing, but I would tell them I was going to lead with brisket and try to teach people, just how good it was. And you think about folks, even myself growing up, if we had beef, it was not brisket and it was not good. So I had to teach folks how to do that. And that's what actually became my competitive differentiator. And we serve it like Texas style. So when people come in, it's a line and we're cutting in front of them. And for years, at every new location back then I'd open up, be it Tampa, Jacksonville, wherever, I would have to hand them a piece of brisket and convince them, to taste it and to try it. And, the funny part back then, I remember, especially when I used to be the carver, these Texans would always come in and you would always know, they would let you know that they're a Texan. They would let you know that they've never had brisket good, this side of the Mississippi. And God bless them, literally 8 out of 10 of them, after they ate it, they would come back and tell me thank you or how much they liked it. They were very polite about it. In the beginning, they weren't so polite, but after they ate it, they were wonderful.
Rivers puts importance in non-meat items too.
But what if we also put that much time and focus in our sides and our desserts? So from day one, we've made those scratch. I put together all those recipes years ago and actually continue to make all the recipes today, from baked beans to mac and cheese to obviously the coleslaw, and green beans, collards, fried okra, all of those. And they sell extremely well. And it's funny, I will hear as much positive rhetoric back on our sides as I do our proteins, and that's, to me, that is vitally important. And we opened our first bakery operation back in 2012, and the challenge with that is I'd never baked before, so I had to learn how to bake at the same time. I had to make all the recipes. I think I gained 18 pounds that summer just playing around and with sugar and everything. And that still remains a big part of our business today. Now we have a catering commissary that we produce out of for Central Florida. And now we're doing wedding cakes, especially for all the weddings that we do in catering. And so it's really grown into its own entity as well.
Beverages are primarily fountain drinks. Beer and wine is also available, but they're not big sellers. The location in Daytona is the only Four Rivers that has a full bar, but Rivers also enjoys scouting out specialty soda pop.
And then we've always had it from day one. I think it's just so cool to go in a place to find old pops, and old sodas. So, in the beginning, it used to be me and a couple of the guys. We'd go all around the state and just look for anything. It didn't matter what it was. It didn't matter how many we could buy. And it's so cool to watch people come in the store, Brett, and they would just light up when they saw, an old Cheerwine or an old root beer or something like that they grew up with. And after a while, we could actually tell what area of the country they were from based on what pop they would gravitate to and how excited they would get about it.
Rivers is a minimalist when it comes to sauces.
Fan of going into a place and seeing 12 or 6 bottles of sauce on the table. It's like, know who you are, know your brand, and stand by it. And I've always been an advocate of that. We started with 2 sauces. I put a sauce, hot, and then my signature. We opened in Jacksonville, where I grew up, and they're a little bit more mustard based, because of Georgia. And it was my darn mom who fussed at me for not having a mustard one. So I put a mustard one out for her, which is obviously more predominant up in Jacksonville and Orange Park and those areas.
But developing his signature sauce was tricky.
That was the hardest thing to make, aside from the brisket, because you don't want to limit yourself just to one regional taste. And again, I wasn't a cook, so gosh, that sauce took me 4 years to make, and I kept making sauces based on recipes I would find online or others I would taste, but I would just make a Tennessee Kansas City molasses one, or I'd make a Carolina vinegar one, and it just there's no uniqueness to it. And so literally one day I had a folder. It had to be that thick, right? And I threw it all away. I was so frustrated, and I said, "All right, dang it. What goes in a sauce?" So your basics, your custard, your mustard, your stuff like that. And then I looked in my spice cabinet, and I said, "There's got to be something in here that's unique." And sure enough, I found one spice, and I'd never used before. And I turned it around, and it said good on beef, chicken, and pork. And I said, "Well, there you go." So I put that in there, and then I put some butter and some honey, to smooth it out and give it that natural sweetness to it. And it really created a very unique flavor. That's, it's never changed over the years. And we're in, 200 to 300 different retail grocers now with it, and, cruise ships and in theme parks. So it's, the basic sauce is doing very, very well.
And what spice is that? Or is it secret?
I don't care. It's thyme.
Oh, thyme, sure.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. It's got a nice flavor, and it really complements it, and it's unique. Most people can't pick it out.
So it's thyme, butter, honey, and some other stuff. Thyme, butter, honey. Wow. Right. It's just thyme, butter, and honey.
Oh, no. It's got the ketchup. It's got the mustard, the Worcestershire, all the powders, the onions, and all that stuff.
And now Rivers is planning to expand out of state.
We've got a lot of Midwesterners that come down 75 into Florida. And so there's some great familiarity with our brand. And some of the markets up there really line up nicely to our core customers.